FlurrySports Podcast. My name is Zach Bruner, and with me, as always, is Jake Osman. How's it going, Jake?
Oh, it's going pretty good, Zach. Like the amount of conversations about Red Lobster, which include the phrase, oh, it's pricey, but how about those cheddar biscuits? We are the fastest growing show in all of sports talk. Welcome to the FlurrySports Podcast. Tell me, Zach, how many times people have brought up Red Lobster and someone hasn't gone, oh, it's a little expensive, but I mean, how about those biscuits? It's every time. It's the pros and cons every time.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way to talk about Red Lobster without talking about the biscuits, which they're pretty good, but like compared to the rest of Red Lobster, they're like the best shit ever. And yeah, for like pros and cons of Red Lobster, pros is almost exclusively biscuit related, I feel like.
Yeah, I put it on the poll, Zach. Do you go to Red Lobster unless you have to?
Unless you have to?
I feel like it's big for like board meetings and like family like birthdays.
The birthdays, yes. I don't know anyone who's done a board meeting at Red Lobster.
Okay, well, some of the boards I've been on, but that's all right.
Interesting. Is everyone in like suits cracking crabs or what's going on?
That's not really the type of board I'm on. It's more college students wearing lanyards.
True. They're like, what's the fanciest thing we could think of? Red Lobster.
Yeah, we went to Olive Garden last month. We got to spice it up. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's Midwestern fancy for you, Red Lobster. So it's been, that seems like the perfect time to use a soundbite that I don't have brought up. Okay. There we go. It's been almost 2 weeks. I guess it has been 2 weeks. No, we did Tuesday. Almost 2 weeks since we've actually recorded. So it's been a long time. We got so many thoughts. I've been across the country and back. Jake, have you ever been to hell before? Because I have. It's called Northern Indiana. Jesus Christ, that place is a fucking hellhole. Why would anyone ever live in Northern Indiana? That is the worst place of all time. And they charge you $19 just to drive through it. One way.
I know. This is a bit of a, I don't know. Never mind. I'm not going to go with the joke I thought I was going to. It's not worth it. It's not as funny as I thought, and it's too far. I'll say Indiana sucks. That's what I was going to say. You were some places, dude, because for the fact that you threw an elbow on Indiana when you also went to Ohio, I think speaks a lot.
I'm letting you know. There's not many places worse than Ohio, but Indiana is one of them. And it's not a joke that I say I crossed the border to Indiana. Like I paid the toll, my maps thing said, welcome to Indiana, and I hit a pothole immediately. The whole thing, the whole road, the highway in Indiana is like cobblestone. Like, fix your fucking roads, dude. It is so bad. It's the worst place on earth. I don't know. And Ohio sucks. Let's make no two ways about it. It is terrible. But Indiana is on a different level. There's nothing there.
Yeah. Ohio is a weird place. I don't think Ohio gets enough love for like how weird it is. It is Ohio and West Virginia, in my mind, are the Hall of Fame of weird states. Because Ohio has like, I feel like everyone dunks on the cities of Ohio. Fair, right? But like Cleveland, Cincinnati, Toledo, I feel like everyone rightfully, gives them the disrespect that maybe they have coming. No one talks about the fact those frickers also have the Appalachians in them. I know people from Ohio who are ding-a-ling, ding, 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 ding. They are, to the bone, redneck, in the same state that has Cleveland.
I guess, are you saying that's impressive? I'm not sure what you're
arguing. It's weird. I'm not saying it's impressive in a way.
True.
It's like when you pull Kraft singles out of the fridge after 3 months and it's the same. It's like not a good, but well, pretty impressive,
Ohio is the 3-month-old Kraft single of America. Yeah, that's fair.
Put it on the poll. Is Ohio the Kraft singles of America? I feel that might be our first 100%. I feel really good about that analogy.
Yeah. That place. You're right, though. Ohio is very weird. In those Midwestern level states, what weirds me out the most is there's like actual people who live there that have Southern accents, and I don't understand it.
I lived for 2 years in Kansas. The strongest Southern accent around me was a dude from Ohio.
Hey, like I don't get it. It makes no sense.
Yeah. And this was with people. I had people on my staff from Texas, Georgia. The dude from Ohio sounded like Lindsey Graham. I do declare. He talked very soft. Hello, my name is Kevin. It's nice to meet y'all. Thank you for coming to our meeting today.
They call me Toledo Kevin. That's the strangest sentence I've ever heard. I don't understand it.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah. I've been to some places. I've seen some places over the past week. Ohio. I guess thanks for having me. Pleasure was all yours, I would say.
You got to go to Canton, though, which is definitely the highlight.
Canton, the Hall of Fame is the highlight. That city also, by the way, sucks. It has, this is for nobody but you and me right now, Jake, and some family members that apparently listen. Canton feels very much like Eau Claire as a city, like the way it's laid out and the buildings and the feel, except it has a brick road through too much of downtown that is not maintained. And it's unbelievable to think Peyton Manning was here 1 week ago for me, and this is how the city looks. Like, I hope he tore everything down when he left, because you need to shine something. You need to fix a light. You need to maybe put a brick in this brick road. Like, it was such a bad place. But hey, I don't know. Hall of Fame's cool.
Very cool. You got to be there, dude. Give me a highlight from your weekend in Canton before we move on.
Here's a highlight. I went to the Hall of Fame, and there's this one exhibit. It's a video exhibit, and you like touch it. It's like it shows the best comebacks or most meaningful comebacks in NFL history or whatever. And there's one of the Packers and the 49ers in the playoffs. And you watch it. And this is in the NFL Hall of Fame. The comeback happens. The Packers lose. And the final score that they show on the screen is the Packers winning by 7 points at the NFL Hall of Fame. And we're like, how long has this been here? This is unbelievable. We watched it back. We're like, what the fuck is going on? It's just there.
You caught an error
in the Hall of Fame. Call up David Baker, because I have a gripe, sir, and you need to pay me for it.
We've said this on the show before. David Baker's got the coolest job in the world.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. There's an error in the Hall of Fame that has to have been there. You know, it's not like they update the videos. It's not a new video. That has to have been there for well over a decade whenever they put this exhibit in. It's mind-blowing.
That's wild. And maybe they just leave it in there to piss off Packer fans.
Maybe. I guess. Like, it showed the Packers winning. We're like, 27-20. Why are we winning this? It was odd. Also, let me do my impression now. Here's me doing an impression. You can do your Rudy Gobert one next or something. This is my impression of every fantasy football person who has never watched football ever walking through the NFL Hall of Fame. Johnny Unitas. Oh, there he is. Al Davis. Manning. Every person. I sat by the Johnny Unitas exhibit for 10 minutes, and every group did the same thing. It was people read names and they point and they keep walking. It was unbelievable.
Do you think that speaks to the type of person that's there, like you said, or is that just like a museum thing?
Both. I would say, like, it's for sure a museum thing, but this is such a unique museum, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a football museum for football people, and football people were there, and all they
True.
did is
Why are you surprised to see people you know are in it? Why are people like, oh, Johnny, still here?
And it was like, I have nothing interesting to say to the people around me, so let's read the name of this one exhibit and let's keep on moving. It was so weird.
That's interesting.
It was the type of people I hung out with all weekend long. It was a very fun time.
They wanted to have you, though. You're their king, dude. They brought you out. Special guest, Fantasy Flurry.
I cut a fucking promo on the room I was in. When the whole weekend I was very much sit back, observe, not much. I got invited to do the expert mock draft, which was like the big thing on the expo, like the expo day. So we were up on like a table. We each got a microphone, which is a bad thing. Like, don't give me a mic if you don't want me to go in on people. I was making side comments. I was like on people's picks. I was talking with the audience. One guy in the front row, he asked if he could boo me when I made my pick, and I'm like, do it. So I got some people to like, I was like the heel of the expert mock draft. And
you were there for 3 minutes and you got plants in the crowd.
For sure. It was someone I've never seen before. Maybe he knew me, maybe he didn't. He made no suggestion that he knew who I was. It was just like, I was talking to him about something, and he's like, hey, it would be funny. Can I boo you? I'm like, you better boo me. Like, of course you can. Like, I was cutting a promo about Aaron Rodgers. I was wearing the Aaron Rodgers FU Tour shirt. By the way, teespring.com/FU-Tour-2021. I was selling shirts up there. I'm like, what's Aaron Rodgers going to? I had people close their eyes, Jake. I was like, everyone close your eyes.
All the time in college you spent about to be a teacher, you were like, time to put those skills to use, baby. Visualize with me, room.
This is like fourth round, so it's not even the beginning. It's like my turn comes back. I'm like, everyone close your eyes. And I was painting a picture, if you will, a mental picture about Aaron Rodgers driving the field. I went like 4 plays deep. I'm like, hit Adams with an out. Oh, run up the cut to Aaron Jones. All of a sudden, 2nd and goal from the 6. Matt LaFleur calls a run play. What's Aaron Rodgers going to do? Think he's going to run that play? Fuck no. And everyone's like, cheers. I'm like, Aaron Rodgers is going to call an audible. He's going to pass that fucking touchdown to whoever the hell he wants because he is the greatest quarterback of all time. Like this, he is on his FU tour. He is listening to nobody. He's going to do whatever the hell he wants. And people were cheering. Some people were booing. I'm like, let's go. I was like hyping up the boos because I want to be the enemy. You know, and we sold shirts, Jake. We sold shirts. Everyone likes
I'm imagining you every time it's like, Rodgers is out there. He's yelling FU. FU tour shirts available at these sites and vendors. And he's just kind of sprinkling the URL throughout the promo.
There's more than one picture that someone posted on Twitter. I don't even know who, but of me pointing at my shirt, just like a candid picture, like of just of the event, and I'm pointing to the shirt. I'm like, perfect. That's all I need. That's it. We're good. And then the whole thing ends with them asking if I wanted to stay to do the next thing there, like to be on the panel for the next thing. And the showman I am, Jake, no. And I walked out.
Asshole. Oh, asshole.
Leave a wanting more. And by the way, people came to the booth afterwards then because they wanted to talk to the enigma, the asshole, the prick of the expo.
It's so good. I want you to know that if I had been there, when you had said no, I would have gone on stage and been like, don't worry, I'll fill in. We're good to go. Then I would have just told everyone to take a random player. I would have been like, you know what, Jameis Winston, big arm. Big year for Jameis. Go for
him. I need to give you like a bullet point, like one bullet point of each player, just the most generic talking point. Like whatever Stu Gatz and Levitard did for like March Madness or whatever.
Yes.
Like just the talking points about the mid-major school that somehow got in that means nothing, just talking about them. That's what I need to do for you.
Yeah, I would try and get the crowd to ask me a wrestling question. Then we'd be off to the races. Boom, guy in the back wearing an NXT shirt. Thank you for your question.
Did you say Gronkowski? You know, he was at WrestleMania. Speaking of WrestleMania.
Glad you asked.
Yeah, glad you asked. Thank you for asking me. But yeah, I have a story for you off air about a specific someone who we used to call out on the show that worked with NFL Network who was there. And I will not trash him on air because he now works for a different company that I would like to work for. But it's a good story. And if anyone wants to slide into my DMs on Twitter, I will let you know the story. It is very funny. It's very good. And by the way, I felt not fulfilled. Vindicated. Everything I ever said about this man to a T. To a T. Read him like a book.
I think if anything you showed, there's a role for you in this world. Like there's at that world at the Canon, we need the tweener, baby. We need someone to get the crowd going. They aren't doing the biz right. We got to get them riled up.
For real. Like I was talking to like my crew who was there with me or whatever beforehand. Some people were offering money to take a kicker first round. Like, are you going to take it seriously? Or are you going to be an idiot, like a big dumbass like you usually are? You know, everyone knows my role at this point. And I was just like, I'm going to read the room. If people are taking themselves too seriously, I'm going to make people laugh. Like, you know, and if people are all being super funny and like goofing around, then I'm going to be serious and just like own the draft. But people were like, oh, I'm taking this person because of this stat, you know, super detailed, good analysis. But I'm like, okay, give me the mic. Like, let's have a little bit of fun here. Let's stop thinking for a second and make picks with our gut. Like, that's all we're doing.
Did anyone give you the layup of drafting a second defense?
No. I'm not sure if they planned this out intelligently, because it's a 12-person mock draft and they scheduled us for an hour, which you're not going to get through it. And then someone beforehand bowed out, so we actually had an extra 30 minutes, and we still only made it through, I think, like 8 rounds or something, because people were talking way too long about their shitty picks. And then I talked way too long about
their shitty picks.
Their shitty picks, but like nothing. I said nothing. I offered nothing to the table. But it was fun.
But he's pointing at his shirt the whole time. It's the subliminal messaging.
People like the shirt. They're like, you're selling that? I'm like, yes, I am. Let me tell you the URL 10 times. It was good. It was good. And I missed a pick. I couldn't read the board, so I didn't know if someone was taken. So I'm like, oh, I thought that was a good value. And I made a joke. I had a few good pops. A good few pops from the crowd. Relatable. That's all I'll say. I was the relatable person up there. But yeah, let's get off of that, because that expo, it was fun. I hope I'm invited back.
Period. Don't say the next sentence. Period.
This is nothing about the expo. It's also good to check back with yourself and understand multiple things about yourself. 1, I still don't like large groups of people. 2, I still don't want to live in a big city. 3, Indiana sucks. 4, the community of fantasy sports people, very fake. Very fake. There was a couple people there who would walk up to you and start talking about themselves immediately. And on more than one occasion, I walked away. There was a couple times people came to our booth selling shirts to talk about themselves. We're like, hey, are you going to buy a shirt? Like, why? Hell, it's like, again, here's a reference for our family, Jake. Have you ever called grandma and she tells you something and then hangs up on you before you say whatever you wanted to say?
Uh-huh.
That happened all day. That was me all day.
To give context to our listeners who don't know our grandma, that happened one time when I called her sick from school. I was in middle school. I called her, didn't have a cell phone. I was 12. Called her, and she went, oh, Jake, I'm glad you called. You forgot your baseball glove. Your grandpa's going to bring it up. Great grandma hung up on me. It was like, grandma, the secretary was so confused. It's like, did your grandma hang up on you? Yes. Grandma, I called you. I'm sick. Help me.
Grandma, help. Yeah, she's not the one to call if you're in trouble. That's for sure. Well, okay, Jake. I think we've gone 2 weeks without talking about baseball. I'm sure you have tons and tons and tons of things to somehow fit into a minute. We'll see if you can do it. First, our theme song for our baseball for the week is this.
Hands on my knees, shaking ass on my thigh shit. Post me a pic, finna make me a profit. When a liquor hit, then the bitch get toxic.
Why the fuck you in the club with niggas wild?
I've been lit since brunch, that shit. Order 42 for the table, let's pop shit. Missionaire or doggy style on my top shit. Pussy ass niggas hate.
We'll get to that a little bit more later. Our girl OBJ posted for the first time in like 4 months, Jake, and that's her newest mashup. Very happy.
Pretty good. Big shout out to all of our listeners listening out loud. Hope you were ready for that. That's pretty good.
Yes, absolutely. But Jake, you have 60 seconds on the clock to talk about baseball. Of course, you're restrained to nothing but time. Do not go over. If you want to go under, by all means, you're encouraged to do so. 60 seconds, though, starts right now.
Well, Zach, in a world that sometimes make you feel a little, down in the dumps, at least you know that all's right in baseball because the Dodgers and Yankees have won 9 in a row, and the Mets, after at one point having the best record in their division and in their half of the league, have dropped below 500. All's right in the world, Zach. Meanwhile, the Braves, who interestingly lost their best player about a month ago, right before the trade deadline, instead of selling, they became buyers, went all in. They've actually improved. They've won 8 in a row. They've decided this is the year, despite losing their MVP candidate, making them my pick to win the whole thing. Go Braves. Also, a Yankees player called a timeout. Then the pitcher threw the pitch home anyway because they didn't see the timeout quick enough. Then the Yankees player hit a home run off of the Twins. But then the ump went, no, you called a timeout. Made him come back to the plate, and then he got struck out. Boom. There's your win for the Twins this week in what was essentially the equivalent of at the playground at recess when you go, no, I need a timeout. Oh, wait, never mind. I'm going to run for it anyway. No, I didn't say timeout. You said timeout. And then just the equivalent of everything breaking down. And you can see a grown man be like, no, I don't want the timeout to count. I would rather have the home run.
You went 21 seconds over. However, whenever the Twins get something over the Yankees, and especially with the Twins this year, I feel like you needed this. You needed these 21 seconds, Jake. And well earned, I would say.
It was the metaphor. I didn't need the metaphor. That wasn't written down. It came to me in the moment. I was like, we've got time to riff. I did not have time to riff, but that's okay.
There's always time to riff in the 60 seconds of baseball talk. Nothing but time. Let's listen to this mashup again through the chorus, just because what are we if not a mashup show, Jake? This is what we started on, and it's been a while. So let's get through the chorus here.
Hey, know me from the closet. Hoes trying to call me a snake. Shit, I guess I can relate, cause the bitch spit a whole lot of venom. And since these hoes all rats, when they come around me, all I see is a whole lot of dinner. I walk around the house butt naked and I stop at air mirror, just stare at my own posterior. I don't give a fuck who talk behind my back. The bitch knew better than to let me hear.
But I would walk 500 miles and I would walk 500 more just to be the man who walked 1,000 miles to fall down at your door.
Hoes said it was a bitch would, and I'm a genie. Bitch so hot, gotta stay in bikini.
Very good. Very good. Again, people who don't know her by now, One Board Jew mashup on YouTube. Jew spelled Jeu. This one's called I'm Gonna Be, and then in parentheses, a thought. So
it's so good. I'm gonna listen to that one unironically. That's a good workout song.
100%. I feel like she's been gone for so long, like almost 4 months. And when she's needed most, she comes through, Jake. Like all of a sudden, this came out like an hour ago.
You know what it is OBJ is like, okay, football season's coming back. We need to remind the people who's the OG OBJ. This girl right here. We're back on the market. She rests when the other OBJ rests, and she rises when it's time. Or I also like the idea that she's such a committed like artist. She's committed to the craft. She's like waiting for the perfect mashup and then hit her. And she's like, oh, gotta make it. Time to return. Time to leave my cabin in the woods.
We'll get to the cabin in the woods thing in a second, I think. But it'll be a good segue. Those are good theories about why it's been so long and why she came back. And again, we'll get to comebacks in a second here as well. But this was specific timing. I think it was calculated for the FlurrySports Podcast Season 2 finale, which is today. Surprise. Surprise, everybody.
Like Abilene Christian, we stayed around a little longer than you thought and left right when you were hoping we'd be here a little longer. So thank you for having Thank you. Oh, man, I always step all over the sound bites. I'm never ready for them.
No, you're good. Jake, and by the way, this is not something we planned per usual. This is something we just figured out. So this will be episode 23 of the season, and it just works out, 23. Go watch the movie 23 with Jim Carrey while we are gone. And I think I'll give you LeBron James.
What other 23 would you mention? Sorry.
No, you're right. It works out perfectly time-wise for this season and for a future season 4. I'm not sure why I would call it like the schedule is going to work out. So what's going to happen? This is the last show of season 2. Hopefully we come back, but our plan is to come back after a 2-week break. So September 12th, we will be recording the night of the first weekend of NFL. So for the first NFL Sunday, we will be recording. We'll have live reactions to week 1 of the NFL. I'm sure we'll have plenty to say. We have a few new bits that are going to be planned out, but we will be back starting September 12th, hopefully, as long as something bad doesn't happen.
That's the spirit. We'll be back. Gives me time in my real life job for the college students to move in as well, which will be great. Also, shout out to the town of Stevens Point. Your deer are too tame. It's official. I went for a walk in the park the other day. I physically bumped into a deer. This isn't a bit. I was walking to the park at 9 p.m. It was dark. I turned the corner and I physically, 6'8" me, bumped into a deer. And we were both surprised, and I was so angry.
The deer's like, oh, excuse me there.
Oh, hey, watch where you're going, fella. Oh, hey there.
Oops, excuse me.
The first day walking, what you doing there?
The deer's heckling you. All of his deer friends just snorting at you.
Yeah, everyone was like, oh, look at that. Oh, just walked right in. Oh, Steve.
Ollie, come look at Steve. He just bumped into this big white guy.
He bumped in. That dude looks like the Michelin Man from Ghostbusters. What's he doing out here in the woods?
The deer make timely 80s references.
Yeah. Also, it's not the Michelin Man. It's totally the marshmallow guy. But whatever. He looks like the Michelin Man.
Yeah, it's the same thing. I got what you're saying. I wouldn't have known any better. But yeah. So as I was saying, 2-week break after this one. You'll be fine. Hit Jake up on Twitter if you want to know more. I'm sure he will respond.
We got 2 weeks. Maybe I'll revive my Twitter account.
Maybe it's got to be a well-timed GIF of something. We'll see what, but it's got to be something big. You can't just inch your way back onto Twitter, Jake.
True. Gotta be a big thing. Mr. No Days Off returns.
Yeah. Mr. No Days Off. You guys should have heard him. He was begging me not to do this hiatus because he's like, hey, can't be off. I'm Mr. No Days Off. If I take a day off, what am I? What am I at this point?
Mr. No Days Off has arrived.
I was definitely just rambling there to find the sound clip. I'm going to reorganize this in our 2 weeks thing too, because I can't find a fucking thing except for
It's been.
I know that's number one on the soundboard, baby, and it always will be. It'll never, ever get off. But yeah, off 2 weeks. We'll be back, talk about NFL, have some good storylines. We'll see what Andy Reid did, yada, yada. Anyway.
In the meantime, reach out to Zach if there's anything you want us to bring back, anything you want for the big return.
True. I'm sure we'll have a massive return just like we did for season 2. Hopefully less time off in between seasons, but let us know specific bits you want us to actually, like, legitimately. This is me being serious for once. Let me know if there's something you want us to keep doing other than burying the lead, because that will be a mainstay, because it's the first thing we're like, oh my God, this is good. And we can't forget about this. Yeah. Other than that, let us know things you want us to keep doing, because we are forgetful. We live bit by bit. I took the old football saying, short-term memory, forget last play. I took that too seriously in my everyday life. Every time I turn a corner, I forget where I came from. And that's kind of how this show is at this point.
That's right. Be a goldfish, Ted Lasso.
Go watch season 2, by the way. If you're waiting, I completely understand, but it is very good. It's very good. Anyway, Jake, let's talk about wrestling. It was a big wrestling weekend. As again, I was sitting in Canton at the hotel bar talking with one of my friends who came with me about wrestling. We talked about wrestling for like 2 hours, and we talked about CM Punk. We talked about all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, like days later, everything sort of culminated, came to fruition, popped back up. So starting with, I guess, Friday, right? That's when the AEW shit popped off, right?
Yes. Friday in Chicago, AEW's secondary show, Rampage, which just debuted a week before, which I thought was interesting. I think overall good move. I thought it was interesting that this wasn't the debut show, all things considered. I get it. I liked the week before too. I was just like, based on what happened, it's like, oh, maybe this could have been like the first one. That would have made sense. But I also like the idea of, based on what happened, this will be its own event. So I get that too.
Mm-hmm. And talking a bit about what happened, obviously, CM Punk from Chicago, someone who was with WWE. You need to expand on this more because you know more.
Yes. But
just from someone from the outside looking in, this is what I know. Tell me what I'm right about, what I'm wrong about. So, like, he was with WWE. He was hard to work with. I think he said some shit he shouldn't have said. Basically, got fired. A lot of people feel wrongfully, and I'm not sure if he had a non-compete clause or not, but he was in Chicago. People have been wanting him to come back, have been teasing him to come back for a long time, and AEW finally pulled the trigger. And in his hometown, obviously, makes perfect sense, and it was massive.
Yeah, so for the record, so I'm going to explain this. I told Zach beforehand, because yesterday we were like, we need to talk wrestling. I understand it's the season finale, and we're talking about a thing that not everyone cares about. So I'm going to make this, me personally, I will put this on my back. I will make this the most entertaining segment of all time. And then when I fail to do that, Zach will make it the most entertaining segment of all time. But here is the deal. CM Punk gone for there was a sign at the show. It became a meme of its own. Almost 7,000 days since the last time he competed. Part of the reason, right? He's from Chicago, but some of his biggest moments in WWE were in Chicago. But they also did a wonderful job. They christened the show The First Dance. There were a ton of comparisons to Michael Jordan. And how when Michael Jordan left the Bulls in the 90s and coming back. That's the only thing for non-wrestling fans that I feel like is a fair comparison, because CM Punk left when he was undisputably, I think, especially for people who at the time were like serious wrestling fans, online watching a bunch of different brands. I think a lot of people would describe him as the reason they were still watching WWE. He was the biggest name in the sport. He steps away. I would say you're right on the money for why he left. I would say people will put more blame on WWE. He's talked a lot about like not being hurt. He's the biggest guy. He's winning championships, but he's never main evented a WrestleMania. He complained a lot about like not getting the same merchandising and push. Never got movie spots like Batista or John Cena. So complained a lot about being this huge star but not getting the same treatment. The flip side of that is, like you said, tons of reports of not being super easy to work with. But a lot of people would say, yes, he was demanding, but also he kind of earned that by being the biggest draw in the sport. So that is the context to what makes this return so big. In the meantime, though, it would be like the Jordan departure is fair, except imagine that when Jordan left, he said it was because he had fallen out of love with basketball. Like, it is Michael Jordan in his prime calling, and when he's gone, he's calling dispersions on the league. He's saying that the league doesn't run things right and they're promoting certain players. Would have been fair criticism, but calling out things like that. Like I think there was a big chunk of people who never thought CM Punk would wrestle again because he had said as much. He had said, like, they basically had to give him the biggest bag of money in the world, that he really didn't want to do it. He had complained about some like fan bases in wrestling. It just seemed like really like it was not going to happen. Meanwhile, I think this is important for context too, because this is when we talk about the whole weekend and everything that happened with wrestling. I think this is important. CM Punk's name has been chanted for the last 7 years as shorthand at wrestling shows for we don't like what's happening. Like, basically people chant CM Punk at wrestling and WWE shows, especially when they're bored. For a while, it was just like, what are you doing? Like, why is this person over? And like, when he was in the company, he got famous basically for putting himself over because he came out on TV and cut what's now known as like the pipe bomb. And he literally, like, he unscripted sat down on the entrance ramp when another match was supposed to be happening and just talked. I mean, he talked in that promo about Vince McMahon dying and how the company would be better off afterwards. He said a bunch of stuff. There's arguments over how much of that was planned and how much of it wasn't. But that's the type of, like, legacy he left. And for him to come back, and his promo when he came back was pretty equal parts. These are the reasons I left, and some things that were really toxic about where I used to work, and equal parts. I'm here now because I think I'm in a company that lets me have more control, that made me because he was in a big indie company called ROH before he went to WWE. So a big part of his promo was, ever since I left there, I haven't really been a professional wrestler, and now I'm back. So that was a part of it, but he spent a lot of it putting other people over and putting over the company he was in. So that was cool to see. I was super pumped for this guy who for years had seemed like he didn't like it anymore. Because once I heard he was coming back, and this will be a good segue when we talk about WWE things, it's like, does he want to be back? Like, what are we doing? And it seems like he's going to, like, be a full-time dude. Seems like he's in on the game plan. So that was cool to see. But it literally, the fact that we're talking about it and that you were talking about it with a random person shows that it worked. But it's just literally a Stone Cold Steve Austin moment. Like, I think it's one of the biggest wrestling moments of all time.
I mean, just watching it and the way it took everything, there's just no doubt. And it was an interesting moment in time because everyone knew before, like, day of, he's coming back. And just the way people were talking about it, people there knew he was coming back. Obviously, I mean, Chicago anyway, so there's going to be people decked out in CM Punk stuff. But everyone chanting, just knowing he's going to come out, and then when he does, people lose their fucking mind. One thing I want you to clarify, because this is something I guess I didn't know. I knew about him, sitting on the ramp talking about WWE when he did that, when he cut loose basically at WWE. You're saying, at least the way it was public he stepped away from the company and he wasn't fired?
It has been framed in history that it was basically a mutually split thing. Now, like all mutual breakups, one side was probably more effective on it than the other. But he has been clear in years since that he wanted to be gone. So I think it's one of those things WWE called it a firing. WWE was ready to be done with him too. Like not only had tons of issues with Vince McMahon, especially towards the end of the run, he was in programs with Triple H and did things like call him out by real name, did things like call out his booking decisions. So like there's like real life bad blood there as well. Triple H has said as much. So some of that was there as well. WWE didn't want to WWE, I think, right? And I don't know this for sure. If CM Punk would have agreed to do what they wanted to do, I think they would have kept him. But it was at the point where it's like, well, if you're just going to like tank the product from within, we got to be done. And I think CM Punk was at the same point.
This is me speculating on just knowing how sports business works and stuff. I would take a wild guess to say he was unhappy and he probably asked for his contract to be released. Yeah. And I'm going to take a wild guess that they said no. And then that's when he started going, doing all the bullshit to get himself let go, basically.
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it for sure. Yeah, I think that definitely happened at some point. If it happened right at the very end, I don't know. But I guarantee you that at some point he asked for a release and wasn't granted it. Yeah, and it's tough because this is an interesting conversation to have right now because in days leading up to this, right, like you said, this was, and AEW said since, that it was purposely the worst kept secret in sports because they wanted it to be like suspenseful, but people still to tune in and see if it happened or not, which is a good strategy. I have some thoughts on like if that was like going to work or not, and what the true merit of that was. But at the same time, I think that sheds light on what the company was thinking in terms of promoting this. I kind of forgot what my point was here, but I'll make a different one instead, which is leading up to it, people were, I think, skeptical of what would he be like. I heard a ton of people in the wrestling community on different super popular YouTube channels and things like that being like, should he be heel right away? Which I was kind of on game for this guy who is going to come in and be the biggest dude on the planet. Maybe just make him a bad guy right away. I think if we have this conversation later, and maybe even when we have it now, we can be critical of it. But as soon as he made that return, just everything was like, this is the best decision you could have ever made. And like, I think that's interesting because when we talk about it, there are serious concerns that I have, at least, of like, does he make this company overall better? But at the same time, there's no doubt that he brings millions of eyes to the product. So that's an interesting thing. But it's funny because afterwards, there's like no criticism, which I think is fair. But it's just like right now, 1 week in, he's the biggest name on the planet. He certainly seemed like he was going to be a babyface, the good guy going forward, which I think in Chicago he was going to be, which is fair. But it definitely seemed like that was his role going forward. And I just think I think that's interesting because I think if I list out like the characteristics of what's happening and I say this guy who's been out of the business, who has been openly cynical, who has been openly like kind of commanding at times of what his character does, comes back in and immediately takes over a company, that's a hard sell for me to be like, and he's the good guy. But then again, there's a whole group of people who are now watching the product because he's on it. So, and they stopped watching wrestling because he wasn't in it anymore. So I think that in itself is a really interesting point in a weekend that I think really highlighted what a weird place wrestling is at right now.
Yeah. Before we transition to WWE, a couple things. I would assume the worst kept secret in sports, just leaking that CM Punk's coming back. I would assume I didn't know this was their second show. Like I didn't know this wasn't their main show. But just the fact that they leaked in, everyone knew he was coming and all that. And it's the same day as SmackDown, right? Which from what I've heard, at least between Raw and SmackDown's definitely better for WWE.
Agreed. Yep.
So I can't imagine if you were going to sit and watch one wrestling thing on Friday night, it was most likely AEW because you knew CM Punk was coming back. Whether you like him, dislike him, know who he is or not. Like me, he came into wrestling after I got out. I honestly had no idea he was this popular, that big. And just recently I sort of figured out that he was that big just because of people clamoring for him, basically. Mm-hmm. But these returns that have happened, the John Cena one a couple weeks ago, and then CM Punk, no matter if you're a wrestling fan or not, it's fucking cool. Like you can tell it's a moment in history. People are finally getting out into stadiums and seeing live sports, which is a big part of it as well. But there's no doubt you watched it and like you messaged me when it happened. You're like, I had goosebumps. And I did too. I had goosebumps for the John Cena thing. And I don't even fucking like John Cena. Like it was just a very cool moment. And it's like, oh yeah, this is special.
Mm-hmm. This one the John Cena one, I was like, this is a wonderful return. Like I was like, this is so good. And I was so pumped. And this, I almost like, I don't know if I smiled. Like it was like I felt like I was witnessing, like, I don't know. It just like felt like the only thing I can compare it to something else is when you're watching another sporting event. Let's say you're watching a random football game and suddenly you're like, oh my God, I'm watching one of the best football games of all time. Like, it's like one of those things where it's like, it's like a moment in history. It's so weird that this is happening because it was just the reactions there were wild. His reaction to returning was really good. I'm going to say some stuff when we talk about the rest of these things and even maybe some of the stuff I've already said. In case you're curious, I'm pumped that he's back. I have some cynicism and like concern of where we go next just because of where I think the industry is at. But overall, him being back is a good thing. And I don't like when you see the way he reacted and the way the town reacted, even if everything after this is bad, which I don't think it will be. But even if most of it's bad, this is worth it. It's so good. I think the only return, and this probably recency bias, but to your point, a return that's almost been ruined by the pandemic in between, that I think is the only thing I can think of that compares, is Edge returning like 2 years ago. Very similar, but his was a dude at his prime who was told, if you wrestle again, you'll be paralyzed. And that was like more surprising. And he came back and was just so emotional. And that was like people, when you were watching it and people in the stadium were, I can't believe I'm like part of this moment. Same thing. Now, a week later, no fans were in attendance, so he couldn't do any of his stuff in person, which totally took away from it. But I think moments like that are awesome. To wrap a bow on the whole thing about just like the worst kept secret in sports marketing strategy, my whole thing is like, I get it. And I get just from a business perspective, because you're so smart on this stuff, like, does it make sense to do what they did when the alternative is everyone already knows? Why don't we do at least like, you don't have to say on the Wednesday show, hey, CM Punk is coming Friday, but why don't you at least, like people were talking about playing a clip of his music or playing like a sound bite of him, something that is like a concrete, he's on. Because the one thing that I think happened is I do think a lot of people tuned in, but I think they could. I'm not the first person to say this either. If you listen to a lot of wrestling media, a lot of people said this, but it's just like, why wouldn't you appeal to everyone and have everyone confirming, saying he's going to be there? They're teasing it, but like he's going to be there. I don't know why that wasn't the marketing strategy.
I think both cases are fun. Like, there's pros and cons to both. What I would say is, and I don't have the specific memory in place, but I remember back a long time ago, I would say probably end of the era of Attitude Era of WWF, there was some return. You know what it was? Never mind. It wasn't that. It was when Undertaker returned, and they kept teasing shit, and they kept showing videos of shit. And I thought it was very cool. I would assume if they kept teasing shit, like maybe a couple shows, they're like, oh, he's coming back. Oh, next time, better come back again. He's coming back. I feel like AEW would be like, AEW diehards who are super anti-WWE would be like, oh, you're doing the same marketing WWE bullshit. That would be my guess. And they wanted to be like, no, this is no gimmicks. There's none of this shit. Because that's what it seems like the whole persona of AEW, what their whole brand is. It's no gimmicks, pure wrestling. We're going old school wrestling, shit like that.
Yeah, and I get it. It's I think, and this is going to be a big part of when we talk about what happened with WWE too. I think even when stuff goes bad in wrestling, the reason I find it so interesting, especially to talk about and think about, is what makes wrestling, in my opinion, at an age where I'm no longer a kid, interesting, is someone is making decisions on what happens. And that the fact that this happened, one, that a billionaire, when he made this company, Tony Khan was like, CM Punk was at the top of his list of people to get. And he's like, I will pay whatever amount of money I need to like get him to come back. I think that's an interesting world we live in, that's possible. I also think what happens next is cool because, like you said, this is secondary show. He comes back, it's an hour long. Now, the thought process there is SmackDown has already ended. Now, I will say SmackDown was not very interesting. They definitely did like a paint-by-number show just to get ready for SummerSlam. And also because I think they knew that they weren't going to be what was talked about anyway, which is fair. There were people who wanted them to go balls to the wall to try and compete, which I also think would have made sense. But in any case, they did an hour show, and now the Wednesday show next week is gonna. I just don't know who wouldn't watch it because they've already advertised like that's going to be his first Dynamite, and so now everything with him, his first match is going to be its own promotional thing. Like they're going to get 4 or 5 huge first time moments out of this, at least. So that part is interesting. Also, it needed to be on the hour show because as you saw with that. He was the first thing on it. He took 20 minutes. 10 or 15 of those was him walking around the ring and hugging people, which great, very good. Rest of the show, I think, in my opinion anyway, the match right afterwards was really good. The rest of it was like the crowd just being like, can I go to bed now? Like it was just like they could have done him walking around for an hour. Like if it was a 3-hour show, I just think everyone would have been like, why am I still here?
It should have just been CM Punk stumbling around Chicago.
I mean, anyone else, would have been a hard sell. Him talking for half an hour would have been so interesting just to hear what he says.
Yeah. Honestly, this was probably the greatest return I've seen probably since the Tim Tebow returning to the NFL. Probably, right? I'm not sure if there's been a better one since. And by the way, once Tebow's already obviously got cut from the Jaguars, and we saw it coming, and it's really setting up for his showing up of CM Punk on AEW. I mean, he's already got connections with the Khan family, and I can't wait for him to bless everybody on that network. It's going to be great.
I really want. Listen, okay, I'm not the biggest brain in the room. You can make this work. Tim Tebow shows up, holier than thou. He's a heel. I want him to come in like mid CM Punk thing and be like, peace and blessings. I'm here. All of your prayers have been answered. And everyone's like, no one asked for this. What are you doing? I want him just to take everyone out. And I just want him to be God's gift to wrestling. And I want him to be unironically bad.
Yeah. This is what, honestly, if Tebow ever would to get into wrestling, this is the easiest way ever to make him a heel is to wrestle CM Punk right now. And that would be unbelievable. Just to be the super polite guy who is hated by everybody, but like cluelessly hated. He doesn't understand it. Super nice, like to the 10th degree, but to your point, bad at wrestling, and somehow beats CM Punk. You know?
Yeah. Oh, it would be good. It'd be a really good in. Oh man. I would love it. I do think I have had some ideas for this article. I actually started writing an article about how WWE should use Gronkowski, and then he dipped back to the NFL, and I was like, guess I won't. But it's the same thing of like Pat McAfee kind of did it, but they bring these big name athletes in, and they could do with Tebow easy in AEW. They need to be heels. Like, I get the appeal that they would have to certain markets, but you don't have to be overt about it. They don't need to hit anyone with a car, but just have them come in and be like, I'm a better athlete than everyone here. I'm a gift. Like Gronkowski would have been perfect, because I just wanted them to have Gronk be super dumb and be like, isn't everyone happy I'm here? Party all the time. Let's drink cans. And I wanted him to stumble into wrestling matches and be like, don't worry, everyone, I'll save us. Let me talk.
Yeah. He's like Stone Cold's drunk, dumbass nephew, basically, coming in. That would be good.
I wanted him to totally misread situations and be like, oh, time for me to make the save. And then he clocks a ref or something. I just wanted him to be a big, dumb caveman running out there.
Speaking of big, dumb caveman, let's talk about SummerSlam.
Great take.
Gonna take a victory lap here for that segue.
Very good.
So I'll let you introduce this, but let me introduce this first. My question to you is, do you think WWE caught scent, as if it was a tough thing to figure out that CM Punk was coming back, I guess? But do you think they heard the news, confirmed the news of CM Punk, and then made this decision to have this come back as well? Or do you think this was planned beforehand?
Really great questions. To give specifics before we talk about everything and like answer those questions. So Brock Lesnar comes back after the main event. That's obviously the big news. And he comes back and after Roman Reigns has beat John Cena. This was the interesting part. Roman Reigns beats John Cena. Huge build, right? I thought some really good promos going in of John Cena, like making – pardon me, burped on air, of making really good points of why Roman's character, like, I thought it was just a really good feud. And obviously they couldn't have it go any longer because John Cena didn't do anything after the match. It was over and he disappeared. Brock Lesnar showed up apparently after the camera stopped rolling. Brock Lesnar threw John Cena around the whole arena, which is great.
Cool. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Love it. I was a little confused why they might still use that footage. I was confused why that didn't appear on the thing. And it's probably because they're trying to make Brock the good guy in this, which is
that's better. They know everyone's going to see it on social media anyways. It's just showing like it's okay. I'll let you talk because there is a little bit of conflict because I think Brock is face, right? Like he's not the bad guy here. Yeah. If he was the bad guy, I think that was perfect. But if he's face, then obviously it's not perfect. But
I think he's the face, but I also think Brock is, even when Brock was heel, Brock is hard not to cheer for because he's just so cool. You can't so he shows up, and as my fake title that you can't see says, he looks like if Bon Iver swallowed Bon Iver. He's so hipster. His beard is grown out the wazoo. He's got a ponytail in. I honestly think for a dude who has always been scary, scariest he's ever looked. He came right out of the mountains.
He looks like a Viking now, like a legitimate Norwegian Viking.
And I think it's great. Now, here's the thing. I do think in this case, it makes sense for him to be face because Paul Heyman, for those of you who don't know, has been Brock Lesnar's manager basically his entire career and is now with Roman Reigns. So I really hope they don't screw it. They can do so many cool things with that story in of itself. And Brock trying to, no matter, like if they do something where Brock's trying to prove that he doesn't need Heyman, Brock trying to just like beat him up. They could do so many cool things with it. It's interesting. Here's my thought. A lot of people are questioning the timing of this. I will say that him showing up at SummerSlam isn't super surprising because it's their second biggest show of the year. And here's my thought. The way this show went, and I have bigger thoughts on this for what it means for WWE as a whole. When it ended for about 30 seconds before the Viking Onion came out, I was like, who do they have go after John Cena? Because that felt really big. And I was like, everyone else is definitely not going to win. And then Brock came out. And I think that it makes sense because it immediately answered that question. I was like, yes, that story needs to be told. Here's my thing. Are they going to do that on a show that's not WrestleMania or Royal Rumble? That's what has me very curious is him showing up at SummerSlam makes sense. Him immediately staring down Roman Reigns and going, guess who's next? Me, when the next pay-per-view, it's not even Survivor Series. It's not one of the big four, quote unquote. So do they just have this be a long thing and they've paid Brock a ton of money to make a bunch of appearances, which could be possible that they just did that and they're like, you're going to be here a bunch and we're going to do a bunch of these, which is cool. I don't know. It does reek a little bit of that. Now, I will say this story had to happen at some point. I'm super happy we're getting it. It makes a ton of sense. I do, like I said, it makes sense because it's the only name left that's bigger than Cena for Roman the face because of the Heyman tie-in and because of how Brock has been the final boss in WWE over the last 10 years. Here's the thing. They just told the story of Roman Reigns is the biggest star in WWE right now. His whole character is, I want respect. I deserve it. I'm like the brand. Then they bring in John Cena, who's like, no, I'm bigger than you. I'm the brand. And he beats him. And then they do the same thing. Like, that's the one thing that's a little weird is now another guy who, unless they really threw the farm at him, is not going to wrestle all the time, came and is like, no, I'm the guy. So you want Brock to win, but also if Brock wins, he's not going to be around as much. So it's just there's some interesting things there. Not that story shouldn't be told. Like I said, it should be, but it's just interesting because with Cena, they brought him back, like you said, for a month. It's really cool, but he's back for a month. So what do they do with Brock? Is he back for a month also, or is he back for the rest of the year until Mania? Like, that is what I think is interesting at this point with that. So that happened and he's back. We'll talk because I'm sure we have more to talk about with Brock. So we will in a second. But two other quick things that I think will be important for what we talk about later. Another big return, Becky Lynch, who for a while in WWE was the biggest name, women or men regardless. She came back and Goldberg wrestled again yesterday. So and along with the return, yeah.
How
we
long
can
was
talk
the
about that too. It's wild. Sorry, what was your question?
How long was the match with Goldberg?
About 7 minutes, 7-8 minutes.
It's longer than I would have thought. My money would have been on like over under 4.5 minutes.
So, okay, let's talk about this very quickly. This is my bigger point in wrestling. I agree with the internet. The internet is getting to a place, the wrestling community, that is very, not that it hasn't been this way, but more so, it is so fed up with WWE. And people, I think we are approaching a point where they're watching it because they feel like they have to. And I think they're watching it, well, I need to see what happens with this person that I care about. But they care about people and not the product, which is a slippery slope of what happens when these people, who, by the way, are mostly very old for wrestlers that they care about, are done, aren't there anymore. I think that's a slippery slope. And also, it's a really interesting thing because, like I said, all those returns happened yesterday, and Edge wrestled, okay? So here's the thing. I would say the 4 biggest things that happened on SummerSlam all involved returns of some sort, if you count Edge as a quote-unquote return. Here's the thing. I think WWE in their mind thinks they nailed all of them. I think WWE thinks they crushed it and that what everyone's talking about is these people who just came back, which is true. And this is part of the problem. They're not quote-unquote wrong. But just to give a summary of the whole show, because I think this is where it's interesting for people who don't care about wrestling, because this is just an interesting industry in of itself. This woman, Becky Lynch, who's been gone because she had a baby. Like, it's the most perfect reason to be off time. She was going to come back and immediately be just this huge return. So let's set one thing right. I don't think she was supposed to come back the way she did yesterday until short notice. Sasha Banks, who's the other big woman in the company, didn't show to the event yesterday. There's rumors that it's injury related. Yeah, that's weird in of itself. There's rumors that it's injury related. There's rumors that she's also going to demand a release from the company. So whatever the reason, she's out. Becky Lynch comes back. Now it's Becky Lynch versus this woman named Bianca Belair, who is probably in the last year, like the most beloved young person in WWE. Like, WWE fans are like, finally, she's gotten her chance in the sun. She's going to have this huge match at SummerSlam. Becky Lynch comes back, and everyone immediately goes, oh my God, Becky Lynch is back. She's going to have this match against Bianca Belair. What a great moment. Becky beats her in less than 10 seconds. It's one of those things. In a return that you on paper could not ruin, it is getting terrible, terrible reactions. Because people are like, I wanted to like this person who came back from having a baby, of course. And part of the reason Becky got over in the first place is because WWE didn't want her to get over, which also WWE does too much. They benefit too much from their own mistakes. But in any case, she comes back. Bianca loses in 10 seconds. And I'm calling it now. Bianca Belair is going to be the biggest name in wrestling in a year because of a mistake WWE made. And that in itself is aggravating, because that's the one silver lining from this is, unless WWE's really stupid, this builds to Bianca versus Becky again at Mania, which is dumb but huge. So I get that, because if Sasha's just hurt, she'll come back and then there'll be like a scuffle, and then Bianca will have to wait, and then she'll get the belt later. But okay, so that return happens. And WWE thinks, great, everyone loves Becky. Guess what? Becky's back. You didn't think you were going to get Becky. Becky's back. And guess what? She's champ. Didn't think you were going to get Becky's champ, did you? So they think they killed it. Then we'll talk about this one. Edge versus Rollins. Seth Rollins is probably the best wrestler WWE has. He has made some interesting tweets that I will not defend here. And by all means, might not be a great guy. So he wrestled Edge, and Edge, since he's come back, has been also one of their best wrestlers. That match was unbelievable. It was so good. And where it was after the Becky stuff happened and the rest of the card, I'm only talking about 4 matches, by the way, on a 6-hour card. So that also is a problem. When they wrestle, Edge and Rollins kill it. So that's awesome. And Edge won. He did like his Brood entrance from the 90s where he's a vampire, which people loved. So that's great. He won. So WWE's like, we killed it. Best match of the night with Edge. Great. Let's talk about Goldberg, Zach, because what is, if you had to summarize it for people, what is Goldberg's character? How would you describe who Goldberg is as a wrestler?
As a wrestler? Now, or what he overall has?
I'd say what he was, because they've tried to present him as how he was this whole time since he's come back.
Okay, so I guess what he was is just like this freak of an app. Like, he would just come out and like this Iron Man, just beat the shit out of basically everyone in his path. Yeah,
I think that's perfect. Like, ex-football player, beat everyone, won a bunch of matches in a row. And since he's come back, they presented him as, yes, he's old, but he's old Goldberg. So he's not human. He's an old gorilla. He could still win. But here's the thing. The match yesterday, and you tell me if this makes sense from what you know of Goldberg, because they've, up to this point, even in the last 2 years when he's wrestled a good amount, he's won the title like twice in the last 2 years. He's come back and they've gone, he can beat anyone. He's old, but he's like old Terminator. Yesterday with him, they tried to tell the story of his body's giving out on him. So he wrestled 8 minutes of, oh, my leg gave out. Oh, I can't lift up this guy. Oh, my back just gave. Yes. His son ran into the ring and got beat up at the end of the match. All good tropes, right? Like if I told you, let's say that this is Shawn Michaels. Let's say that it's or Hulk Hogan for people who depend on who's listening. Some old wrestler who's super over has come back and he's wrestling. And now you tell the story of, oh my gosh, he can't go anymore. He's like losing in the ring. This huge, sad baby face moment of like, is he about to have to be done? Is he old? His son's in the ring and he's getting beaten up. Oh, the sympathy. Any other person. You just put an old tank in the ring and told me that Goldberg's appeal is that he's a train. And you just told me that he can't move anymore. Why do I care?
Well, especially when he's returned 20, 25 times at this point.
Yes.
He keeps returning. He's very old. And every return, at least the past couple of returns, have been highly criticized. Like, this is what you're doing. Like, he's done. Like, let's just leave him be, So now he's coming back. People are criticizing him for being old and not good anymore. And now you're being like, hey, guess what? He's old and not good anymore. And everyone's going to be like, yeah, we know. Like this isn't fulfilling. This isn't good to watch.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. The match ended with him being unable to continue. Like he couldn't defend himself. And here's the thing. People were cheering the whole time because you're telling the story of, oh man, he can't go anymore. And the crowd went, we know. Why are you still making him not only compete, but he was competing for the championship over guys that are younger. And to a point that I think – so it's interesting because to your point, and I'm trying to have that perspective by the end of the show, you said earlier that wrestling gave you more to be excited about than ever. I had a moment last night where wrestling literally depressed me. I was depressed because I was like, what is – even including the CM Punk stuff. And I know that's exciting, but WWE has over the last like 3 months and further than that in the COVID period has released like 60 people at least. Some of those huge. One of those people is Bray Wyatt. All you need to know about him is that he was champion, beloved by all, beaten by Goldberg in Saudi Arabia, which is all kinds of bad. People don't like they were in Saudi Arabia. People don't like that he lost. People don't like that it was Goldberg. So all of that's bad. He's gone. And now it's just these part-time things. And then the final match is Cena, who's a part-timer, who's great, should be in the final. And then they bring Lesnar back, which is great. So here's what WWE has done. They've booked out of the 4 matches 2 returns, 2 like part-timers who were the best parts of the show. And WWE goes, see, it works. Yeah. And then the 2 worst things they did were the same thing, and they went, see, it works. So it's just a really sad time when, like, I can't, like, besides Roman Reigns, I left last night being like, who did WWE build up for me to cheer about next? Big E, for sure. But I don't know. Like, Bobby Lashley beat Goldberg. Bobby Lashley's 37.
Right. Yeah, at some point you have to create new characters. You can't just keep bringing them back because they get old. With the Goldberg thing, this is something I don't like, and it's a reoccurring pattern. Like, it's just the state of the business at this point, which either you like it or you don't. I would assume, just from what I know as a old wrestling fan, outsider now, I would guess Goldberg's done because of the way he went out. And it's the same type of thing as like the Undertaker, losing at WrestleMania, and they keep saying like you have to give back to the business that gave to you for all those years or whatever. And so this guy who's unbelievable, unstoppable, just an unbelievable force in Goldberg, he can't go out on top. No one goes out on top in WWE, and I really don't like it. I understand it, but no one likes to see their heroes fall. And that's all WWE does because the business is bigger than the superstars, which again, either you like it or you don't. I just don't.
Yeah. A couple thoughts. One, yes, you're absolutely right. The trope is that like the hero goes out on his shield and he's supposed to, Undertaker's talked about this in interviews really well. He's supposed to build up like the next guy, which in theory sounds great, except the guy we're building up, Lashley's great, really good, not young. He's not the next guy either, but cool, build the present. Here's the other thing. Reportedly, Goldberg's got 2 matches left.
What are you going to do? Like wheelchair match? Like this isn't going to be good.
This is I sincerely think WWE is trying to tell the story of look at this old hero who's going to muster up 2 more matches of magic, which is fine if it's not Goldberg. That's right. Not his thing.
No.
And like you said, he's come back a bunch. And they've told this story of he's unbeatable. Oh, he lost. He's unbeatable. Oh, he lost. They've done that a bunch. So now you're going to tell me, oh, he's super weak. He's going to have a match where he looks unbeatable, and then he's going to lose his last match. So it's tough, dude.
For the super casuals, yes, this is the same Goldberg that was on your N64 WCW cartridge. Like, that's what we're talking about.
His son, like I said, came out and got in there. His son's like our age. His son's 25.
Sure.
So I don't know if they're trying. This is a sad sense. I don't know if they're trying to get his son in the business. That legitimately could be part of it. Which maybe could be good. I don't know. Here's the thing, and I think this is what makes it so interesting right now. I think a point I made earlier, fans are getting to the point where they are really just done with WWE as a whole. I think AEW has made this so interesting because wrestling fans for a while, and CM Punk is part of this, which makes this whole TED Talk so much weirder of real life, because WWE entered a world when they beat WCW where they were the show. Sure, TNA is real, and for a while it was a contender, but then it wasn't. And then New Japan Wrestling, big deal, but only to the people who like care enough to go watch wrestling in Japan, So besides that, it's WWE. And in that time, what happened was WWE made all these brands like NXT, where people who didn't like quote unquote WWE were like, oh, I mean, WWE's okay, but I'm going to watch NXT because it's what the real fans watch. It's the real wrestling. And then AEW came around and they put it on the same night as NXT, and everyone went, well, I'm not going to watch NXT because it's WWE, and I'm going to watch the real wrestling. I'm going to go watch AEW. NXT now is, and this is so wild, most of the releases recently have been NXT guys. The NXT champ got called up 2 weeks ago and lost to Jeff Hardy, who had lost his last 8 matches on Raw. NXT, which at one point was the biggest show in wrestling, has been like almost ruined, and apparently, according to reports, is being punished because it lost the ratings war to AEW. So, but tell me if this makes sense, Zach. They released all of these talents from NXT, a show that is run by Shawn Michaels and Triple H. They did not approve any of the releases. The releases were done almost as like a punishment. And now they're being told, now you got to fix it and get it better, even though we released a bunch of guys. And so that's happening on one hand. And they're punishing Triple H, who, again, I cannot stress, unless I'm missing something, is the future head of the company, and who made NXT good. So that is wild to me. 2, fans have turned on NXT. I've already, the big NXT shows tonight, and I watched a bunch of people online make comments of, I mean, it's good, but I don't want to support it because WWE sucks. which I almost get because the releases lately have been terrible. And they've also done things like keeping guys on after they get their third DUI or keeping guys on who have been accused of sexual assault. Like that's also happening and very valid reasons to hate the company. But those people are still there who are good. So I don't know how that makes sense business-wise. And here's what's also happening. All these releases are going where, Zach?
I would assume to AEW.
Boom. In 9 months, when there are no compete clauses up, they're all going to AEW. So tell me this, Zach. What stops AEW from suddenly having to put over all of these guys that WWE didn't have time to promote?
Right. So, okay. So, yeah. Short term, I would assume AEW is good, right? It gets those ratings and all that, but we're going to fall into the same trap.
This is what made me so depressed last night, is I could not see a light at the end of the tunnel where WWE, when it was alone, and I'm sorry that that point I meandered a lot, but the point was when WWE was alone, there was nothing to stop it from hoovering up all the talent in the world. They literally made companies like NXT UK where they bought out 3 indie companies in the UK and said, we're just going to buy all these talents so that they can't be big names elsewhere, which again, gross. I get it. But NXT UK, pretty good show. I like that show. No, because the talent on it's good. But it's like, but the way they did it is scummy. So now WWE has too much talent. But here's the weird thing. What's WWE's worst part right now is they give us the same product over and over again.
Yeah.
You know what happens when your roster gets less, though? They're going to have to innovate. They will at some point have to put new people forward. Right now, what is driving people nuts isn't that it's just repetitive. It's that people like Goldberg get pushes instead of guys like Bray Wyatt. Well, guess what? Bray Wyatt's not in the company anymore. So now who are they going to be mad at if Bray Wyatt doesn't get a push? AEW. So all that's what made me really pessimistic yesterday after watching it was I don't know if the business gets better. And I think there's a world where AEW pushes WWE to be better. And I also want fans to realize, and this is why the industry is so interesting right now, because there's just not another sport that's like this, where 2 companies are like this big at the same time. WWE has so much more money. I know AEW is owned by a billionaire. I get it. I get how rich Khan is. But still, AEW's appeal is that it's owned and ran basically by wrestlers. It's also appealed because they push people to fans like, well, now their roster is ballooning because they have 2 YouTube shows that are free to watch and 2 regular TV shows. They are almost at WWE capacity already. And WWE keeps releasing people that fans go, I can't wait for them to go to AEW, which will push down the stars that they have built over the last 3 years. So it's just an interesting climate of, I think in a year, WWE is going to accidentally make themselves the most liked company in the world again, because AEW will become stale and everyone will go, do you see that Bianca Belair in WWE, which they will have created by accident? It's just a really, I don't know. But to your point, and I guess I've talked a lot, so I'll phrase it this question. Is it good to use all of these big names? Because I can't get over the fact that the best thing that happened over the weekend, I get the Punk thing was unbelievable. There's no beating that. But the Brock Lesnar stuff was gold, man.
Yeah.
The Cena match was good, and the Brock Lesnar stuff is gold. And but what makes me sick is like WWE's not wrong, but it's like, I don't know if killing the business is the right word, but it is just like what's happening. I don't know what's going on.
Well, speaking of killing the business, I did want to do a public apology or like condolences to you about the OnlyFans thing. I heard OnlyFans, they're not doing that. I'm just sorry about that. But
to me personally, thank you.
Yeah, I just, we can talk off air about it, but I just know your tie-ins with it. But with WWE, this is the way you just talked about how, obviously all the superstars that the WWE are cutting are going over to AEW. So this is where my mind is at after hearing that. It seems like the WWE keeps dangling keys in front of the fans' face to grab their attention for a second, while everyone is flooding AEW and kind of drowning their product a little bit, but with big enough names that WWE fans like, right?
Yeah.
And then while they are hopefully quietly building up these people, maybe by accident, like you said, maybe on purpose, I almost wonder if somehow in a year, 2 years from now, there almost could be that sort of tension like WWF versus WCW, with WWE versus AEW.
My hope is we get that level of product. I hope that happens and that everyone cares about wrestling and it's all good. I just want a world where we have multiple companies that make each other better. That would be great if it didn't have to be a monopoly. I don't think it can exist.
With all these returns happening, and tell me if I'm wrong, it seems like it's almost a race to who can bring back Scotty 2 Hotty. And I'm just wondering, who do you think Scotty 2 Hotty is going to do the worm on?
I would not be surprised if WWE still has him on contract. I bet they just keep him around in case they need him to go out there.
I was looking through my Pokemon cards the other day because I was pricing them and valuing them. There's some good ones, but I also have wrestling cards in there as well. And I have a Scotty 2 Hotty card. I'm like, oh my God, where is he, do you think?
And that's the thing. It's a nostalgia thing. What I can't get over, right? And this is the industry WWE and wrestling has created. Everyone right now, and rightly so, is going, how good is AEW? That's great. Partly because of all the releases and all the talent they're going to have. I'm just predicting there's going to be a time where everyone goes, because it's how wrestling fans are. Everyone's going to go, sure, AEW is good, but are you watching that WWE thing? Wrestling fans like thinking that they're in the know. So when everyone jumps ship, we are almost at the point where, because this is what I'm talking about. Right now, WWE is the thing. So we're going, I can't believe they screwed up Becky Lynch. I can't believe they're having Goldberg wrestle like he's the biggest babyface in the world. But if this is a year from now and everyone's watching AEW and CM Punk and people start to get mad about CM Punk beating guys who are younger than him, who've been around since day one, people are going to go, why isn't anyone talking about Brock Lesnar being back?
Yeah.
Did you see the Gorilla Man descend from the mountains? And it's just like, I think WWE knows it. I think they know, and this is part of the problem. I think they know that they can't lose. I think that they could really screw the pooch and eventually hit gold on accident.
It just seems, I think you're right, they can't lose. It seems unbelievable how it appears they make wrong move after wrong move. Like, as someone, I have more respect in a business sense for Vince McMahon more than pretty much anybody. I think he's a actual genius. However, it seems like he makes bad move after bad move. With NXT, at least from what I heard, like when I was talking in Canton to my friend, it sounds like because of those ratings drop, losing the ratings to AEW, Vince McMahon put his hands in the pot and ruined it more, and then also cut people like you were talking about. So it seems like he's taking power away from Triple H because he thinks I can fix it, which is totally Vince McMahon. But
that's I think the wild thing is Vince McMahon has so undisputably defined the business that now no one can seemingly tell him that he's wrong. Like, it's just gone to a point where it seems like he thinks he knows what's right and they keep screwing up. But here's the thing, right? And I don't think people talk about this enough. He does still get it right. The Edge thing worked. The Brock Lesnar and John Cena thing last night worked. And he left that show, I guarantee you, going, well done. Well, we did it again, Vince. You solved the problem. And he's not wrong. Because, yes, people are talking about CM Punk. ESPN tomorrow is going to be talking about Brock Lesnar coming back and looking like a freaking Viking.
Yeah. Which I've seen Brock Lesnar in real life, and I know he's big. He has always been very big.
Yeah.
And, I haven't seen him in a while. And I saw Roman Reigns like next to people, and Roman Reigns is like, he's a fucking dude. He is massive. And all of a sudden, Brock stands next to him and looks down at Roman Reigns. And I'm like, oh my God, who is this man?
In a match where the whole time I was going, Roman Reigns is making John Cena look not that muscular. And then Brock Lesnar came out. I'm like, oh my God, Roman Reigns looks unmuscular. This is wild. Like that stuff matters. Seeing a huge dude come out and just look huge is still good. It's still good. The criticism of Vince McMahon is he's gone to the point that he only likes big, sweaty dudes. That's like the biggest joke on the internet is size is king. And the sad part is sometimes that works. Brock Lesnar, it works every time. But I don't know. If you're listening to this and you're a wrestling fan, odds are that I just made you more upset about what's going on. If you're listening to this though, and I think this is interesting and you're not a wrestling fan, I do to a point you made, Zach, I think this is a time to start watching. I think I could legitimately recommend something to almost everyone. I think the CM Punk stuff is a moment in time. AEW has a dinosaur who wrestles. It's a wild. And the WWE, like, here's the thing. I honestly think the Becky Lynch thing is going to end up good. Not saying I like the way they brought her back because it just didn't make any sense, but it's going to end up being good. Tune in to watch Brock Lesnar just throw people like they're cheese. I mean, it's so good.
You know why that Brock Lesnar Roman Reigns thing is going to be amazing? It's because of Paul Heyman. And that dude, you can't argue, is like possibly the best asset WWE has still.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. And yes, I think so too. And like wrestling has become in some ways must watch again, which is cool in a lot of ways. It just makes me like, I don't know. It makes me really nervous of what comes next because to your point, there are reportedly huge changes coming to NXT. And it's a perfect example. It sounds like Vince McMahon has gone, this isn't working. Let me change it the way I want. But here's the hilarious part. It sounds like Vince McMahon has gone, let me make it a company that makes big stars so that I can use them on the main roster. When this whole time they've been making huge stars and he hasn't used them on the main roster. Right. So that tells me that it's Vince McMahon going, well, if I can't build them, I can't use them. And that is a wild business strategy. That's so dumb. But I've also seen this online. I've seen this online too. Tony Khan is a nerd, huge nerd, right? But he's a nerd with billions of dollars. And he owns a wrestling company. I'm just telling people out there, if you think that he's not going to turn into Vince McMahon eventually, you're so dumb. He's not as charismatic, but that's happening. He's going to write himself into a storyline one of these days, and he's going to make the company his. Like and it will be good for a bit. And then it will be everything he touches will be not worsened, but like anything Vince McMahon touches is quote unquote tainted. Like it's just his now. And it's so inseparable. Like it's just so, we've talked about before, Vince McMahon is the hardest person to talk about because he's a genius who undisputably treats people like they should not be treated. So I don't know. It's wild. It definitely, and I'm going to leave our show tonight and go watch NXT. So it's, I don't know what happens next, but I will say the CM Punk thing is just cool to watch. Just go and Google that, and it's fun to watch. I think that is the takeaway. I will also say this for our listeners, and this will something they get. Watching Pat McAfee call wrestling is instant serotonin. He is so good. Watching him call out Brock Lesnar returning yesterday was nuts because it's just him being in awe of how big Brock Lesnar is, and it's so good. At the same time, I mean, that's the stuff that makes wrestling. If I had to break it down to two things over the weekend that you should watch, go watch Brock Lesnar come back and listen to Pat McAfee freak out over the dinosaur descending down the walkway, and go listen to Punk return and listen to JR, who is the voice of many people's childhoods, call him Jordan-esque and compare it to like the city's medicine. It's unbelievable. That in and of itself, JR talking about, and Taz, who's very good. Like those moments it's just a total production thing. It's why wrestling is so good. But it goes back to the end of the day, it's scripted. And that's what makes wrestling, we wouldn't be talking about this if it wasn't, because we're going, why are they making these decisions? It doesn't make any sense. But it's so good. It's so good. And it's going to make me lose my hair. But, that's fine.
It's once you watch wrestling and just understand wrestling, just understand the business and how they pump up people, how you write certain people, how you build storylines. I think it's unbelievable because there's for a lot of reasons, but to just have that mindset looking at other professional sports like we do on this show all the time. I think it's very fun. And it's also very interesting to see how sports entertainment, sports aren't always different. Like the way they build storylines, the media is very much the same in a lot of things. And
yeah, very true. I just thought of this metaphor. This might be a good way to send it off. If you're wondering why WWE is so maddening, but also so alluring at the same time, I thought of this with the NBA, and it's so true. Think of, and Zach, this is especially for you, but our fans will feel it through your experience. Imagine if there were two basketball companies that were scripted. You knew they were choosing who won games. And the NBA, right, the one that's been here the longest, it's got the big money. They have decided that LeBron has got to win again. It's definitely going to be LeBron. Not only is Carmelo with him, let's say Paul Pierce is back too. Someone who is old, unbelievably over the hill, but he's on the team, right? And some people like Paul Pierce. Some people loathe Paul Pierce. But they know that because Paul Pierce is on the team, it means that Damian Lillard isn't on the team. Damian Lillard's on another one. And they win instead of Damian Lillard. But you know that somewhere down the line, they're going to get so mad that they're going to make Damian Lillard's team win the whole thing. Oh, and by the way, the other league, they just had Giannis Antetokounmpo, of course, win the whole thing. And you're like, why wouldn't you? It's perfect. It's so good. And the NBA released half of their players, and now they all have to go compete in the other league. But by the way, Giannis is still our guy. It's unbelievable. Like, when I think of it in that context, it makes me like, because sure, LeBron's a dude, but for how long? And as much as you hate LeBron, right? You hate that he would be the guy. How much more would you hate him, one, if you knew they were choosing him? Yeah. Even more than they already are. And he's the dude. And then how much would you have to watch if the next week you knew that they were going to put Damian Lillard and a bunch of scrubs over LeBron's super team? You have to tune in. You have to tune in.
That's a good comparison. And I do want to talk about two things really quick before we go.
Yeah.
First thing you just reminded me of. The Bucks won the finals.
I think it's been the story of our season. I think there's nothing more that I want to associate with season 2 than the Bucks winning.
I thought you were going to say it's been the story of this season. I don't think anything more needs to be said. That's what I thought you were going to say. We got to say something. And this is the way I'll approach the subject. Why does everybody think Chris Middleton suddenly is one of the greats? I've seen more than one person, more than one network ask if Chris Middleton is a top 5 Buck all time.
Which I will say, I'll dip my toe in that pool. I don't think that's a ridiculous conversation. I do think it's because where do you think he's top 10, like top 15? Where would you put him? Just like,
I'll put him 15.
Okay. That's why I don't think it's ridiculous. I think it's fine to go. Is he top 5? No, he's 11. I don't think that's a ridiculous conversation because it's relevant. Now here's the thing. I think it's ridiculous that happens now. Like, he's not any different than he was. He did the same thing he's always done. He's so inconsistent. When he's good, he's good. And he was good enough for them to win the whole thing. Let's not, get it twisted. It was so good. But I don't know. Is someone going to tell me that he figured it out? Like, no one watched that and went, he's got it. He solved the puzzle. Just like no one watched Game 7 and is like, oh my God, Giannis is never going to miss another free throw. Like, he had a great free throw game. It's not him, okay? Did you watch Game 6? Because I almost had heart palpitations watching him at the line, But they were good enough to win. I stomped all over your point, but I agree with you that it's ridiculous that he's in that conversation. And that's not fair to him either, because he wasn't as bad as some people were saying either.
No. And just talking about valuing players super quickly, Giannis was overvalued and undervalued, or overrated and underrated, maybe 5 different times during that series. And my opinion still stands on him, and it's not a popular one. I think he's a highly suspect superstar. I think he has some blatant weaknesses that make him one of the worst superstars that we've ever seen. I think he's a very good player. I think he's a superstar. But also, I think the reason why people criticize him, and myself included, is because we compare him to players like LeBron, Kobe, people like that who are ball handlers.
Yeah.
And just because Giannis is used incorrectly a lot of the times, compare him to a better post player, because that's kind of what he is, right? Like, he's not Kevin Durant, even though he's also 7 foot. He shouldn't be dribbling the ball on his side of the court ever. I will continuously say that. He should never cross half court with the ball in his hand ever, because I did a stat at one point. It was like 70% of the times it ended in a turnover during the finals. That was like games 1 through 4. Like, he is not good at that. However, he is an unbelievable player. As a Wisconsin sports fan, not necessarily a Bucks fan, because I found out during this entire thing that I'm more of a player fan than anything for NBA. And I think that speaks to the detriment of what NBA has done now. But as a Wisconsin sports fan, I think he's an awesome, it's going to sound so old. I think he's an awesome representative of the community. I think he's an awesome superstar because he's just a good dude, and he's a freak, and he's got a great story, and he's everything. You know what I mean?
Oh, Sonny, you're such a good representative of the community. Always picking up your recycling on the lawn outside. Oh, so good. You help out at the food pantries on the weekend. What a good representative. So good. Oh, can you pass me my yogurt? Oh, tapioca, please.
Or did he see Giannis load the groceries for Norma the other day? Oh, what a good.
You sounded so old. But listen, that is like what we're talking about. Who didn't like seeing Giannis win a title, dude? It's like you said, I would classify myself as more of a Timberwolves fan. Like, I just grew up. 1, you like the Timberwolves more, so that made an impact. But 2, it's like KG, and they were good. Always wanted them to be better. Kevin Love, when he was cool at his jazz lounge at the Timberwolves. It was Ricky Rubio, his first time there.
And Ricky Rubio, nothing more needs to be said.
Yeah. But it felt good to be like, this is our guy, man. Everyone liked him. It was good. Brook Lopez stopped looking around. Made eye contact with the trophy.
Yeah, once he focused on the basket, man, he started hitting shots.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know this bit, because I will share with the world over and over again, go watch Brook Lopez highlights. He's always scanning the crowd. His eyes never stop moving. He always looks like someone just called his name.
Yeah, all the time, constantly.
It's so good. But here's the thing. Is the Bucks winning the championship a good thing?
That's
in
what
your
I was
opinion?
in the way that it happened. And this is probably controversial to at least Wisconsin sports fans. In the way that it happened, I think no. I think if they beat the Lakers or if they beat a big market team, then I think it's a good thing. But beating the Suns, I don't think matters. And I think it was probably viewed, despite it being a very close series and overall exciting series, just like competitive wise. I think it was probably going to be labeled as one of the worst NBA finals because of rating, because yes, there's very passionate fan bases, but there aren't many fans outside that bubble in Milwaukee or outside that bubble in Phoenix, you know?
I agree. It just, now here's the thing, right? We talk about this all the time. Talking about why looking at things from a WWE lens can kind of help your enjoyment of sports. Imagine, so think of what this series was booked as, which you had people on networks going, man, these are two terrible towns. And you had people talking about, just why neither of these teams were great and just the whole time kind of crapping on it, including shows I like. Dan Levitar's show did not like this series at all. Which
also, by the way, shitting on the superstar who won Finals MVP the entire series.
The entire time. The entire time. Now, think of that, because this is what I'm getting at, is I think it's a good thing, but it could have been so good because, one, no one started talking about how good a dude Giannis was until he won it. And then everyone went, no one deserves it more than him. Which, why weren't we doing that the whole time? Because that's easy to care about. You don't need to make him the best player in the world. Just make him the most liked player in the world, and everyone will tune in to see if he does it or not. Two, make it the series, because this is what I feel like after watching it, of two teams who are cursed and who may never make it back again. Because I watched that, and for me, what hit me the most, yes, I was like pit in my stomach, and this is as a Wisconsin sports fan, at times going, if we don't win this freaking game, we're never going to win a ring again. And as it was over, I got goosebumps because I was so happy for Giannis. And as Devin Booker left the stadium, I went, that poor guy is never going to win a ring in his whole fucking life. And Chris Paul's done. Chris Paul's never going to win one. My whole thing went, they're cursed.
Yeah. See, this is where I had to self-reflect a little bit because I love, again, I'm characterized as a Giannis hater. I love Giannis. I just don't like some of the outside factors in his fans. I loved seeing him win. He deserved it. He stayed there. And even like he said, like they won the right way. They built it up. And he literally is a kid from nowhere who did all that.
Yeah.
Unbelievably happy for him. I think I was more happy to see Chris Paul lose. And that brought me so much joy. Like, yes, he's a dirty player and I don't necessarily like him. I just like that he is the biggest loser possibly in sports history. Like, he finds a way to do it when odds are stacked in favor of him. I think that's fun.
Just think of, I mean, this story was so there. This isn't even a booking thing. This series happened. Nothing stopped the media from covering it like this, from going, we have on one side the biggest loser in NBA history, who for one reason or another, his fault or not, has lived from cursed team to cursed team, who got cheered on his way out of the Clippers stadium because they're like, at least one of us made it. And he made it there on the same team as Devin Booker, who everyone would love to see succeed, on the guy who has been destined to live his life out in Phoenix for some reason, going against Giannis, who has been destined to live out his life in Milwaukee. You could have told the story of the guy who can't win versus the guy who may never, the guy everyone loves, who might never get another shot again.
And by the way, Coach Monty Williams, Coach of the Year, everyone loves, amazing story.
Everyone loves.
Versus Coach Bud, who is still worried he's going to be fired before the season begins.
Which is fun. You could have told that. I mean, tell the story of Bud and the Bucks being like, what are we going to do if we don't win this? It's so easy. But to your point, It's not as I was happy that they beat Chris Paul as well. I never forget the time that he got the T-Wolves the loss by calling out a guy's untucked jersey. Never forget. But not nearly as happy if they had been playing even the Clippers. If they had beat Kawhi and the gang, Pandemic P going 3 for 13. Shout out to the Levitar show. If they beat them or if they beat the Lakers, man, or if they beat Rudy Gobert. Can you imagine if he had beat Rudy Gobert?
Seeing Rudy Gobert lose in the Olympics was the highlight of my summer. Seeing him cry and basically get carried off the court. It's the same feeling. This is going to be dark, people, so buckle up.
Oh, does it have to go dark? Can you think of a different analogy?
I don't think so, Jake. I'm already into it. It's the same feeling as you watch a high school football game. Okay, and it's their last game of the season. And it's a school that you hate. Maybe you hated growing up. Maybe you don't like one kid on the team, and they lose, and they're done with football forever. And you see them heartbroken. You see them crying, and it just fills your heart with joy. Like every time, it puts.
Imagine that football team surrendered in both world wars. Imagine the feeling you would get. Oh, and now imagine the guy on that team started a global pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, Rudy Gobert is the worst.
Rudy Gobert.
Anything else you want to say about the Bucks? Apparently they won. Bucks in 6. Congrats.
For the record, I cannot wait for the 30 for 30 about Bucks in 6. That was unbelievable. That also earlier I definitely said Game 7. But that's okay. When they famously won in 6. But in any case, that's so cool.
Trevor lost his fucking mind when you said Game 7. Just so you know. I know you're listening, Trevor, and I know he's been losing his mind since we haven't talked about it. So when you said Game 7, I let it slide for that reason. Because Trevor,
I'm kind of an asshole.
Is kind of an asshole. So
here's what I would say about the Bucks. Let's enjoy it because they might not be back, and that's okay. But it does feel like I watched this finals, and I agree with you that it's going to be remembered as a bad one, which I think is a shame because I watched it, and this is the first time in probably 6 years where I was like, I have no idea how these two teams made it to the finals, and I have no idea who's going to win.
Yeah.
So I thought that was cool. And I don't know when the next time that will happen again. Oh, it's so good. I thought it was so – and it's just like, I don't know. I did not think the Bucks would be the next Wisconsin team to win a championship. But it's pretty cool. And now I'm all in on the Brewers winning one so that the Packers get really nervous.
Yeah, that's right. Let's hope. And then, Jake, to close out season 2 on a high note, let's speed through this. I watched Ant-Man. So let's talk about Ant-Man.
What a way to end the show.
Yeah. We just talked about the Bucks Ant-Man. Now let's talk about Marvel's Ant-Man, Jake. In your opinion, and from Captain America to whatever Avengers bullshit you think's the best. What? Sorry, you didn't deserve that shot. Where does Ant-Man rank for you? Like 0 to 10?
Do you want me to rank this based on where you're at or where I'm at with the movies?
Overall, like all across all movies.
It is in my group that I would watch anytime. I think for me, it's the one I would watch. I think it's the easiest watch out of all of them because I think I would say that there's probably, in my opinion, let me do a quick count, 4 or 5-ish movies I think are better movies. But out of all of those, I think this is the one that I'm like, anyone can watch this. Anyone can like it. I can watch it anytime and not be bummed by it. For me, it's easily top 10. It's like it's my top favorites, I think, just because I like that Marvel made a family comedy.
Yeah, and we knew I was gonna like it because I love Paul Rudd, no matter what.
Yeah,
it just didn't feel like a Marvel movie. It felt so different from everything else. And I like watching the credits at the end with Paul Rudd and I think I got his name right, Adam McKay. That's who. Yeah, he wrote on it too. I'm like, of course he did. That's unbelievable.
Yeah,
he's one of the people who I feel like can do absolutely no wrong. I think he's a comedy genius. I like that about the movie. Obviously, there's funny parts I felt it didn't follow the Marvel formula. I like that. And the fact that there was like 5 characters plus T.I. in the movie, like I liked that. It wasn't overly complicated. And by the way, T.I. just played himself. He just wandered on set.
It's good. Marvel doesn't do it. Was so subtle. I love that in the same universe where like aliens are invading the planet. Paul Rudd a heist.
Well, not just that. In one of the future Avengers, we could have T.I. just in it. He's in this universe now.
Rightly so, right? I think out of the movie, who do you think besides Paul Rudd everyone came out of the movie talking about? Because I think there is like a breakout star. Not that he isn't a star otherwise, but that everyone's like, he's got to be in all the Marvel movies.
I'll say who I think. I'll say who I believe. I'll say second who I think the audience is. I'm going to say, and I hope this isn't true, I believe the audience probably thought it was that dumbass guy who had a gun, like the dumbass friend. Did people like him?
Yeah, you're right.
Damn it. I liked... I forgot his name. I looked up the actor's name because I wanted to talk about him. But the doctor, Dr. Pym or whatever. I like him.
Good news, he's in all of them too because he's important. But yeah, he's an important character, which is good. Yeah, Michael Pena shows up in like a bunch of them as like dumb comic relief.
Is he? Like that's fine.
I thought some of those bits were good. The bits of like my friend told me through this friend. And it's just him voicing over as a funny concept. The gun thing is a little much, but that's okay.
The voiceover things were funny, and you could tell. Like, those were the parts that McKay and Rudd wrote.
Yeah.
Everything else, they did that right.
Yeah. It's a weird movie in the Marvel context. But I like that they wrote that character. I thought that was cool. I think he adds a lot to future Avengers movies because whenever he's around, I'm like, oh my god, why is Paul Rudd there? Keep Paul Rudd safe. Like,
yeah, right.
He really feels like a normal dude who's like, whoa, geez, why Paul Rudd, back up? Why are you out there? Stay safe.
I do like Paul Rudd a lot. His ex's husband or boyfriend or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because of his voice, and maybe it's because of the actress who played his wife. I couldn't stop thinking it was the brother from Everybody Loves Raymond.
When you started describing it, that's where my brain went to. That would be funny. I wish it was him. Now he's doing Jimmy's John's commercials. Yeah, he's good. The movie has gotten a lot of credit for making which I've never thought of till they said it, of like making a divorced family that's not the point of the movie. The point of the movie isn't like how will they get back together. It's just like they coexist really well. It's like a divorced family where it's like they're cool with each other. Everyone's fine.
The ex is a criminal.
Who works at Dairy Queen. The best part is him fighting Falcon and just like apologizing the whole time. It's so good.
I was surprised to see him there. I guess this is kind of the appeal of Marvel movies, to see these characters keep popping up. I keep forgetting that that's a thing. I'm like, oh, I know him from somewhere. I'm like, oh yeah, he's fucking Falcon.
I think you're getting to the point where that becomes like a big appeal of the franchise, because this movie makes fun of that a lot. There's like, I think when I went to theaters, the biggest laugh the whole time was, oh, we just got to rob a place. Cool. What do you mean it's the fucking Avengers mansion? That's the biggest laugh in the whole thing. Is like you forget that it's a Marvel movie, and then Ant-Man's got to sneak into the Avengers place.
Right. That's good. The Doctor talking about how he doesn't want to give this technology to Stark. Like, that's good. Like,
That's
stuff
good.
like that. That is. I'm not becoming a fan, but I'm getting it, Jake. I'm getting it. I'm going to fight it.
I'm just saying we're in dangerous territory, Zach, because you are just at the point where I got really into it.
Where do I go from here over these next 2 weeks? Because we have a 2-week hiatus.
Raw. Let me double check. This is a point where I believe the next one for sure is. Have you watched Avengers 2 yet?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Good. I was like, otherwise we're out of order. It's got to be Civil War. Civil War is next, which will be a bold prediction out of all the ones that are left. It will be your least favorite. Sorry for that. Consider it a challenge. I challenge you to like it because it's a Captain America movie. Then from there, I think, and I hope this is true, I think it's Thor Ragnarok. That might just be wishful thinking because I really want that to be the next one because it's where they get freaking Thor right, and I think it's going to be your favorite one. But it's either that or it's Guardians 2, which you'll also like. We're starting to get to the point where there's a bunch of movies you could watch in any order. So we're getting there because suddenly in a movie or two you're going to watch a Spider-Man movie too.
I'm dreading that, by the way. I don't know why. I just don't. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to like.
You're dreading that? You'll like Spider-Man. I think you'll like him.
Is what's her name? Emma, not Emma Watson. Big-eyed chick. Is she in the Spider-Man? What's her name, Jake? She is
Aya?
No. What? Oh no. Oh no.
Sorry. Captain Marvel.
No. It's a girl. I thought she was in a Spider-Man movie. She's funny. Her name's probably not Emma something. She's a ginger. I think so.
This is how we're ending season 2, by the way.
I know. This is good. Keep it going.
Okay, she's a ginger. Ron Weasley.
Yeah, we're closer. I don't know what to look.
Scarlett Johansson.
Bingo. Nope. Spider-Man actress.
Oh my gosh, you're thinking of Emma Stone.
Bingo. You got it. Is she in it?
No, there's a different Spider-Man franchise that you do not need to watch at this point. She's in that one. I can't believe you called Emma Stone big-eyed chick.
Am I wrong?
She seems like a lovely woman, and I won't.
She's funny,
and she's got big ass eyes.
Yeah, fucking massive. Okay, this is the end of season 2. Let's remind the folks that we will be back September. Well, we'll record September 12th. We will be back Monday, September 13th. Over this next 2 weeks, we will be planning some bits, really, really structuring out our next show so it's not as scattered, obviously. I might try to get into wrestling. I'll talk to you off air about that. I will watch Captain America Civil War. Had a brain fart there. I recommend everybody to watch Ted Lasso if you're not waiting for them all to be out because they're very good. And also, by the way, on ESPN Plus, The Return of the Ultimate Fighter, I've been watching that. Fucking awesome. That is the smartest show of all time. Like in terms of promoting your own product, I think it's absolutely genius, and I recommend it very much. Jake, tell them they should watch.
Let me think. If you haven't seen the Netflix show Formula One, something to drink to drive. It's like Born to Drive.
Something to drive?
No, I can't remember. It's like Born to Drive, or it's Fast and Furious. It's something like that. Look up F1. It's a good show. Look up the Formula One show on Netflix. I didn't know I was gonna have to be plugging something. It's very good. Makes you like the sport. I think it's also like genius marketing because it makes me care about a sport that I had no interest in. So good. Another suggestion, honestly, my first Marvel TV show, Loki. Loki's good. Loki's very good. So I like that a lot. Ted Lasso's great. I want to give you like a really good recommendation, and I'm trying to think of something to give you all.
Did you watch Sweet Tooth yet?
No. Oh, that's the other show I need to watch. I need to watch Sweet Tooth. You know what? This seems like a fun idea. We talked about wrestling a lot. Let me give people a fun wrestling match to watch that I think everyone will like, no matter who you are, because it's got everything covered. Good wrestling, silly premise, and pretty good turnout. One of the guys in it has just made a big debut in AEW. The other one is no longer wrestling due to personal allegations. Sorry, I can't. It's not. You can't win them all. But here's the match. It's a guy named Velveteen Dream versus Aleister Black in NXT. Here's why I want everyone to watch this act. The whole concept is that Aleister Black is a goth devil dude, basically, who's like punk rock, who's badass. His whole thing in NXT was he can't be beat. No one wants to mess with him. He's like a legitimate MMA guy. He'll kick your head off. Velveteen Dream is a Prince impersonator, basically, who's like has overly sexual tones, who's like sliding all over the ring, who's super weird, is somewhat flirting, somewhat cutting a promo against Aleister Black. And his whole thing is he's such a narcissist that he wants the badass to like recognize him and say his name. The whole match is about like Black acknowledging Dream as like a legitimate wrestler, even though he's ridiculous. And the match starts out, I don't think I need to say anything other than this. The match starts out with Black appearing from the floors like a devil, and Velveteen Dream makes an entrance with Black's face paint drawn on his butt. He makes like a Rick Rude entrance. It's so weird, and it's so good. And the culmination is so – I don't want to give away what the ending is because it's actually really good storytelling, and everyone should watch it. Because once you watch it, I bet when you just heard it now, you went, nothing in the world could make me watch that match. And I guarantee you people will like it. If you sit down, you watch, do what you should always do in a wrestling match, look up promo first because you'll see the really good WWE video package that they put before it. And then you go watch the match, and you'll like it. And you'll see a dude who's so weird. It's just the best wrestling tease in the world to come out and be like, how do you get in your opponent's head? I've spray painted both of us on my butt. And it's really, it's mind games. It's good. That's my recommendation for the crowd. Velveteen Dream, Aleister Black. It's really good. Go watch it.
It's been.
That's how we'll end it.